What's up, everybody? Welcome back to our Phases of Kratom Addiction Recovery series. Last week, we got into what long-term recovery looks like and what post-acute withdrawal syndrome is. And this week, we're going to get into the reclaiming and rebuilding phase of our recovery. So this is a phase that I was able to experience about the second year of my quit, and these phases can take on different time frames for everybody. But for me, as I shared last week, I went through a really long post-acute withdrawal phase. And I got into why that happened and, different things about it. And so then the next phase that came for me was, I was feeling better after that long-term recovery aspect and phase that was really tough. And I knew that it was very important to me to rebuild my life. For a lot of us, our kratom addictions really affect different things about us as people and our lives. It affects things like our relationships, our finances, our careers, personal goals that we have. There's this progressive narrowing when we're in this addiction where a lot of times at the worst of it, our focus is narrowing to this point where kratom is our main focus and it takes up all of our time and all of our attention. And so in that, many things fall to the wayside. And so as we're going through our recovery process, there comes a point where it's time to reclaim and rebuild what we have lost to our addictions. And this is a super sweet part of recovery, because after we get through the post-acute withdrawal stuff, we're going to have more strength. We're going to have more motivation. We're going to be able to set bigger goals for ourselves that we could have never dreamed of accomplishing when we were in our addictions, and we can work on accomplishing them. And it is so awesome. So we're going to get into that. And to start off with, I'll share my experience with you that when I got out of my post-acute withdrawal stuff, I was a year and a half into my recovery. So I started off fairly slow with, this rebuilding, where it began with me just making the effort to reconnect with the people that I love in my life. My relationships were something that were hit really hard by my addiction. And so I was doing this through my post-acute withdrawal stuff, but when I was feeling better, I was really able to give so much more to my relationships and the people that I loved. And what this looked like was I was able to spend time with people that I loved without having to worry about how long my kratom high was going to last, when and where I was going to dose, being worried about getting sick and when the dose was going to wear off. So I was able to be fully present in these relationships, spending time with these people, like I hadn't been able to do in years. So that was one of the things that I focused on first. Next, I started working on addressing different things that I had let go during my addiction. I hadn't been to the dentist in probably 5 years or something, because my kratom addiction was 3 years. And then my post-acute stuff was a year and a half. So that was, 4.5, almost 5 years that I hadn't been to the dentist for even a cleaning. And I hate the dentist. I've gotten better with it now, because that was part of what I did was I had this literal phobia of the dentist. And that's why I would also put it off. And so I faced that fear. And that was a big part of the rebuilding and the reclaiming thing for me, was that in my addiction, I had gotten to the point where I was not functioning. I had such bad social anxiety and panic attacks. Kratom really exaggerated that stuff in me. I had a phobia of driving. I hated going to like anywhere where there were people. I hated interacting with anybody. So things like going to the dentist and, getting a cleaning or whatever, it was a huge like fear for me. And so I started to not only like set goals, but I also started to face my fears. And so going to the dentist was one of them. To even bring it down to like, a smaller level than that, like I said, like I hated interacting with people. I hated going to the grocery store. Like I literally would have panic attacks in the grocery store because I felt like everybody was looking at me. And I felt like it was so painful to interact with anybody when I was in the worst of my addiction. And so I started off like forcing myself to go to the grocery store. And I learned through this by going to the grocery store, by going to the dentist, by talking to my neighbors when I had gone through all lengths to try to avoid any sort of, running into my neighbors. I live in a neighborhood in Chicago where I've been for so long, and I had this fear of running into anybody. And so I started facing those fears where I would make conversation with my neighbors. I would or if I didn't make conversation, I would smile and I would say, hello, hope you have a good day. And so it started off like that, where I would force myself outside of my comfort zone because my comfort zone became progressively more narrow in this addiction, where I only felt comfortable, in the place where I knew that I was going to be alone and that I knew that I had my Kratom there. And so I started to push myself outside of that. And, along with going to the dentist, I went to the doctor. I figured out some long-standing health issues that I was dealing with, some underlying nutritional deficiencies. So I addressed all of that. I hadn't worked a normal job in over 7 years because I had been in the cannabis industry, doing that kind of thing. And so I knew that one of my long-term goals was to go back to a job that I felt fulfilled in, which was working with food. And I came from a background going to culinary school, working with food for many, many years, almost 20 years. And I knew that I wanted to get back to that. So I studied nutrition, and then I also took some online certification courses for some different parts of culinary that really I'm passionate about. So I was able to do that as well. And these were things too, you guys, like I didn't just wake up and go, oh, like I want to do this. These were things that I thought about when I was in even my post-acute withdrawal stuff. You got to keep your goals very simple when you're in that phase. But like as you start moving forward, for me, it was really beneficial to think about the things that I wanted to do and that I wanted to accomplish, and that how I wanted my life to look. And I knew that I wanted a job that was meaningful. And so during this rebuilding and reclaiming, I took these steps by, studying the things that I'm interested in, getting my resume together. And then it went into like a huge goal for me, which was getting back to work. And I was able to, through the rebuilding of my resume and all of that, apply to the natural food store that I've always wanted to work at, that's close enough to my home where I'm able to like get there easily and stuff. And I was able to get a job. And so I feel so grateful, so blessed, so fortunate. And it really is the culmination of this rebuilding and this reclaiming that I went through. So that's how it looked for me. It may take on a different shape for you. You may already be in your career. Your relationships may not have been affected, but there can be other things that you do to reclaim. It may be giving more time and attention to your home and to your responsibilities. I put my finances to the wayside when I was in my addiction, and I was able to focus. Oops, I just hit my banjo string. I was able to focus on, paying off debt and like doing things like that I had not taken care of when I was in my addiction. So this is a really awesome part of our recovery process. And it's great to like come from a place where we're not doing well in our addictions, and then to go through our recovery process, the healing process, and then to get to this point where it's time to rebuild and reclaim. So that's how it was for me. I encourage you to let us know how it was for you in our comment section. And please know that like wherever you're at right now, that this is to come. And there's a lot of hard work that we have to put in to get to this place. And even the rebuilding and the reclaiming is hard work. But I've found that like the accomplishments from working hard feel like so much better than any dose of Kratom ever did. So there's great reward to this. So I encourage you to share like what this looks like for you, or if you're not there yet and you're still in your addiction, like, you know, what are some of the things that you could dream or hope for your life, or like goals that you know, could see for yourself when you get further into your recovery. And we'd love to connect with you in the comments and encourage you with those. So next week, we're going to get into the final phase of our series, which is using what we've been through to help others. And it is so sweet. And I look forward to going over that with you next week. And we'll see you then. Bye.